everybody is having to get a lot more creative and a lot more intentional with their clients to make sure that we're bringing to them very meaningful um, strategies. And it's not just about the insurance; it's also about the people. What are we doing to help their HR department with their people? What are we doing to help their HR department with understanding what's important to their people? Because it's not just the medical insurance or the ancillaries. Are they able to afford it? Are they meeting benchmarks? Are they, addressing the different generational gaps? What about social determinants of health? There's just so much more that goes into being a consultant in the healthcare space than a renewal or cost of the plan.
Welcome to Benefits Broker Boost, the show that gives employee benefits brokers practical strategies to grow, scale, and streamline their business. Presented by PlanSite, where innovation meets efficiency in employee benefits. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. I'm joined today by Allison Adams. Allison, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Adam. I appreciate it.
I'm excited about our conversation today. We met, was that in November?
Yeah.
Right in the heart of Q4 busy season. Allison took some time out of her day to come into our office. Met then. Allison's got a really cool backstory. For the last 7 years, she's been working with Assured Partners, who was recently acquired and rebranded a couple days ago to Gallagher. She's been a broker there and handles really, really good volumes of business. Before that, she's been in the insurance space for 20 years. And prior to that was actually a teacher, which we'll talk a little bit about. She mentioned that in our conversation in our office, that's part of her passion is educating on benefits. So we'll jump right into there. Allison, anything that I missed there?
No, I think that means as far as professionally goes, yes, that's pretty much everything.
Awesome. So one thing I like to start out with is when someone takes time out of their day to watch Benefits Broker Boost, I want them to walk away with something that they can do tomorrow to grow their business. So we want practical, applicable things. I think we've got some really great questions that will lead to that. So no gatekeeping. That's kind of one of the rules that we don't want. I don't want like a marketing company to come on and say, well, you've got to go download this to get it. It's just, share the information. I know you're not going to do that, but we like to make sure that people walk away with value. So I'm excited for the conversation today.
Me as well. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm ready to give all my secrets. Just
We
kidding.
won't ask for all of them. Maybe just a few. But so awesome. Like I said, you started out as a teacher,
Mhm.
and then you mentioned that you have a passion for educating on benefits. What skills do you feel like have translated best from the classroom into being a broker?
I mean, I feel like everything. I also was a school counselor, so part of my education journey, I guess you could say. But, nobody really understands insurance, whether it's benefits, which is what I do, or business insurance, even personal lines. It's just kind of a necessary evil. I think a lot of people look at it that way. But really educating people on how to use their benefits. It's not just pull out my card and go to the doctor. There's a lot more that goes to it. And also for employers specifically, educating them on how to position their benefits to be a positive form of retention. Retention of employees, especially right now with all the different generations that are coming in and out of the workforce, is really important. There's different styles of communication that each generation requires or responds to. So really educating my clients on that piece of it. And then the counseling piece of it comes in too. There's a lot that goes into insurance with regards to, who needs what coverage, what kinds of other products are out there. EAPs are a really big one right now, actually since COVID, and a lot of people don't access those, but really need to. The mental health crisis in the United States is at its highest, and EAPs are a really valuable piece of the benefits package. So just really making sure that I'm sitting down, listening to what my clients need, listening to what they're hearing from their employees, because it's not a one size fits all, and then finding the solutions that are appropriate for their specific demographic.
I hadn't actually thought about that piece of educating clients on how to position their benefits as more of an actual benefit to the employees. So walk us through that. That's I think everyone wants this. They want to be the one who educates, the one who helps their clients understand how to better utilize benefits. You manage a big book of business. How do you balance that? Do you have regularly scheduled check-ins to make sure they're doing it? Or is it as needed, open line of communication? What does that look like in your schedule?
Yes, to everything you just said. Like I said, every client is different. You have to really be able to ebb and flow to the client's needs, and that also differentiates. Like it's differentiated by the size of the client. It's differentiated by the type of employees they have. So I have some groups that are sub 50 that we are doing regular check-ins. We talk often. They become not just clients but friends, and then I have clients that are well into the thousands that have the same type of relationship, and then everything in between. And also those that I really don't hear from, except maybe, when I'm doing my check-in, quarterly or semi-annually. I listen to what it is that they are wanting from their benefit program, but while also knowing what my capabilities are and what I see with their size segment and their industry, and what I feel as a consultant is appropriate, so that we can really meet in the middle, and everybody feel good about the relationship and the guidance that is provided. So there's not a one size fits all answer at all.
Sure. And you're establishing those expectations up front with them. How do you like to be communicated with? How can I help you better understand those things? And then kind of building that into your schedule as you bring them on. Is that how that works?
Absolutely. But also it kind of goes a little bit more deeply into that. I would say, there's a lot of times when I'm taking over a group, well, every time I'm taking over a group, we're talking about timelines. We're talking about deliverables. Anybody can come in and say, hey, I'm going to do A, B, and C for you. But in reality, does that ever really get delivered? And so a really great way to make sure that those deliverables are met is to have a timeline that holds all of our feet to the fire. Because oftentimes, you're working with our team, but we're also working with TPAs. We're working with other carriers. We're working with the HR team, the CFO, sometimes the CEO and the owner. So there's a lot that goes into it. And so really establishing a well thought out timeline that is a workable timeline is something that we find to be very not just transparent, but very successful for our clients to really understand what they're hiring and what they're paying for. And then as the relationship develops, that's when you can really fine tune that timeline, because that's when you start realizing, okay, there's a little bit more meat to this client than what we had originally thought of. And so maybe we need to add some additional connect points, or, what have you. So it's definitely, you have to be very flexible in this business.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense though. So, um, I like that thought process. I like, making sure that your timelines and expectations are set clearly up front, but still leaving some room for flexibility when the need arises. It helps you at least plan your schedule. Sometimes you're going to get the wild card in a day, but helps you at least get things more structural.
Adam, it's not sometimes, it's every day. Every day there is something that comes up and you just have to be ready to roll with it. Thus the reason for my ponytail today.
It looks great. I would not have noticed. Well, great. So when you were in the office, we were talking about, this last Q4 was the toughest renewal season we've had in maybe ever, at least decades. And you talked about the need for brokers to become more strategic to win in the future. What does that? I think everyone wants to say that they're a strategic broker, right? And that they're meeting the needs of their clients strategically. What does that look like after the 2 decades that you've been in the insurance industry? What does truly being strategic with a client look like in practice.
Never stop learning. There's always new solutions out there, and you're right. This was the hardest fourth quarter that anybody in the insurance industry has ever experienced. That is 100% the same feel across the board for other brokers that I've spoken to and carriers. And unfortunately, Adam, it's not going to get any better. So the forecast is it's not going to look any better for next year's renewals either. So, as a broker, or I don't even consider myself a broker, I consider myself a consultant because that really is what I'm doing. I'm consulting with my clients to try to find the appropriate solutions that fit their needs. But if I'm not constantly learning about what else is available and getting creative with my strategy, that's such an overused word in our industry, but I have to get very creative for my clients because if I don't, then another broker will. And if I don't, and my clients are not also aware of kind of the landscape of what's been going on in the insurance industry, they can, take a look at a renewal that I bring to them and be floored, which a few of them were this year. But because of our communication ahead of time and because of the trust that we've built and the relationship that we've built, they know that I'm constantly looking for something new that will be applicable to them. So a long answer to your very short question is we just have to continue learning and listening to the needs of the clients and really being aware of what capabilities are out there for our different clients because you're going to be handling like I said, a sub 50, which is considered small group in Nevada. And then over that in, small group and large group, you're going to be handling those very, very differently. And I handle my multinational clients very differently than I handle my only Nevada located or, maybe only, a state located employer group. So there's just a lot of learning going on, which I love. I think that's, how you stay young. So
Yeah, that's that's great. The thing that I like to ask people is, we know that the rate increases were a big factor in what made the Q4 of 2025 difficult. What were some of the other surprises that you saw that were either created by the rate increases or, a result of those that made this quarter tough? Carrier behavior, employer response to those things and wanting more information. What were the surprises that made it extremely difficult? Obviously, I'm taking a pretty big increase to this employer. They're probably not going to be really happy about it. Were there any surprises in the process that were like, this was a huge result of what happened in Q4 that we had to figure out how to address?
So I would say it's not just this Q4. I think it's every renewal, whether it's, this year, last year, Q1, Q2. If you're not staying up to date with your clients on kind of what's happening with their claims, then there's going to be surprises. So that's number one. You have to stay on top of it. And so I feel like probably the overarching difficulty for us as brokers is when you have employer groups that have under 100 enrolled because you don't get any data from the carriers. So there's really no way to know what is driving these increases. Now, if you have good relationship with the carrier, which obviously we do, they might be able to give you a very overarching like, hey, there's 5 high cost claimants and maybe one of them has a musculoskeletal issue or whatnot, but that's as deep as they can get. And oftentimes you don't even get that. So it really is kind of the blind leading the blind with trying to figure out why the employer is, getting the increases that they're getting, unless they're very close to their groups. And sometimes, obviously, even though with HIPAA laws and whatnot, you're not supposed to, they oftentimes do know a little bit about what's going on. And so that's where staying in touch with the client all throughout the year is really important as well. And developing communication outreaches for employees on how to use their plan. When this is a typical, a typical strategy. There's that word again. When to go to ER or to urgent care or to use virtual visits. Just very minor stuff. When you get into the over 100 space and or into the more creative funding mechanisms, i.e., balance funded and or self-funded, fully self-funded, captives, things like that. There's a lot more of the real meat and potatoes of data that we get. And so we can really tailor our communications throughout the year and our meetings throughout the year with our clients around what's happening and how we can circumvent that and how we can get creative with that. And so when you get into that over 100 space, there's a lot more that you can do for your clients from a very proactive and intentional space than what you can when it's under 100. So I feel like you almost have to be more creative in that under 100 space because you're blind. I don't know if that answers your question, but and that's regardless of this year. I mean, it was just really sad delivering the renewals that we delivered because they are definitely higher, but we run into this kind of scenario every year.
Yeah. So walk me through this. So I think a lot of employers see renewals as just their rep delivering pricing news to them, right? And not really as the result of strategies that they've taken in the past or as strategies that they can use in the future. How do you help clients understand that?
Broker or consultant. You're one or the other. If you're a broker, that's the traditional, unfortunate, probably what gives a lot of us really bad names. Get the renewal, deliver the renewal, maybe get a bit of a decrease or rate relief. Um, and then, deliver that, do the open enrollment in whatever manner necessary or, that broker practices. And then you don't see them again until the renewal comes through. So that's the old way of doing things. And unfortunately, that's the way that a lot of brokers handle their business. So as a consultant, that's where we're talking about being extremely involved with your clients and doing anything you can do. Again, even when your hands are tied at the under 100 space as far as data goes, or the over 100 space where, maybe you get limited data from the carrier, but then pull in you're more on the self-funded space and you're pulling in a lot more meaningful data. Like, what are you doing with that? A traditional broker is not going to survive. I don't think in over the next couple of years. Everybody is having to get a lot more creative and a lot more intentional with their clients to make sure that we're bringing to them very meaningful, I'm going to use the word again, strategies. I don't know another word, but very meaningful strategy solutions. And it's not just about the insurance, Adam. It's also about the people. What are we doing to help their HR department with their people? What are we doing to help their HR department with understanding what's important to their people? Because it's not just the medical insurance or the ancillaries. Are they able to afford it? Are they meeting benchmarks? Are they, like I said earlier, addressing the different generational gaps? What about social determinants of health? There's just so much more that goes into being a consultant in the healthcare space than a renewal or cost of the plan.
Yeah. Oh, do you have a specific example? I'd like to know, and maybe you don't. This is just off the top of your head, where you helping educate a client help them change the way that they were thinking about their strategy and their long-term renewal strategy. Um, for example, right? If you came to me with this last year, let's say a 50% increase, which wasn't unheard of. Um, but can you highlight a time that you can remember, and maybe not, that you had someone that thought this is going to be the best outcome, and based on educating them, understanding their business, helping them understand the impacts of the decision on their business, changed their long-term strategy?
That's what we try to do with all of our clients. So, yes, can I think of one? No, I can think of a ton. Again, that's where that education piece for myself comes into play with understanding what's out there on the market. You mentioned a 50% increase. Unfortunately, I did have the displeasure of delivering, an increase at that amount or right around there. And because I knew of alternate solutions that were available, we were able to pull them out of that never ending, rat on a wheel type of renewal and put them with a different type of program that is not it's not the long-term goal, and they know that, but it is a short-term fix for what their long-term goal can be when they have a specific high cost claimant come off of their plan. And so there's definitely there's always a plan beyond the year that we're in. We try to always have a 5-year plan, but like a very solid 2-year plan so that everybody knows what we're doing moving forward. That's not to say that it doesn't go without headaches and heartaches and, when you're used to doing things a certain way as an employer and you're used to doing things a certain way as an employee when it comes to your healthcare, and you have to really kind of change that up, change is uncomfortable. And so being able to educate not just the employer, but also effectively educate the employees on that potential and most likely, very likely discomfort is part of the overarching solution that we have to pull in when we do have those high increases. On the flip side, when we have clients that have just been kind of going along, right, because they've been getting wonderful renewals, maybe they've had flat renewals, really helping them to change their thinking of this is actually not the best for you, because potentially, obviously we have to dig into data and whatnot. And luckily with AI, there's a lot more available to us, even in those smaller groups. But letting them know, like, don't get comfortable with a 0% or a 5% because that means you're running really well. And who is making the money on this? It's the carrier, right? And so let's take a look at how we can help you to take control of your health plan and take control of those dollars so that you can put some of that money back into your business, which everybody's needing right now. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know this as well as anyone, but there's a lot of biases that come into play um, when you're talking to business owners, especially small business owners that know their employees really well, that have kind of a long history with those employees. You'll get the occasional business owner that says, "No, we can't leave this barrier because this person's doctor that they had a baby with 15 years ago is amazing, and they're only on this network." Right? You know what I'm saying? That where there's a really strong bias that's not really the right the right choice. But how do you help manage clients and be empathetic to those things while still pushing them towards making the right strategic decision?
So I would say pushing them is a really strong statement. Obviously my job is to guide them, and what's right for me or what I think is right is not necessarily right for the client. That's where listening to their needs really does come into play. And so if they are really set with a specific carrier, we run into that here in Nevada quite often because we do have a capitated HMO plan in Southern Nevada, and and those doctors are only part of that plan. And so if we change that network, 100% of the population's doctors are going to change. So we run into that often. I think what ends up happening with employers when they finally say, okay, we need to make the move because either we're growing. I just had this happen with another client actually that was with this carrier. Their growth has been more out of state than in state, and so they don't meet the thresholds to be able to stay with that carrier in state. And so having a conversation with them and being very upfront with, look, at this is what it's going to look like for your employees. Um, and we're going to help you and your employees along the way to explain what is going to happen from here. Like they have to be fully aware. I believe over communication is much better than the alternative. And it can get not pretty with the employees, but if you position it in the correct way and they have a good relationship with their employer, which typically they do, then it's a pretty easy sell. On the flip side, if it's not something like that where they're being forced out, but maybe they're being kind of quote unquote forced out because of cost, I mean, business owners are definitely cost conscious. And so it's not really a hard guidance. It's just a more of a, okay, let's talk about what this is going to look like for for your employees, and what are we going to do as your partner to help soften that blow. And a lot of times it's as simple as I said, education, sitting down with them one on one. We do a really great job of customizing enrollment opportunities for our clients, whatever works for their, for their workforce, but also bringing the new carrier in to talk through kind of what this has looked like before and what their network looks like. So it happens, I think, anymore too. A lot of employees are just used to it. They're used to carriers changing every now and again. So I don't think it's as devastating as it was in the past, but it's definitely an education opportunity.
Yeah, those are some great examples. I hadn't thought about bringing the carrier in and having them talk through people that have done the same process. I think that's a great idea. Okay, so let's talk looking 5 years out. You've talked about the strategic broker being the way that all brokers are going to have to go, or consultants, right? You being the strategic consultant to your clients. Um, what things have you done in your career to educate yourself to the point that you can be that strategic broker? Let's talk right now for someone just getting into the space. What are some of the really great CEs that you've done? What are the great things that you've self-educated on to really be that strategic consultant to your clients?
That's a great question. And CEs, I don't think I'm going to reference CEs because we have to do CEs like everybody in their jobs do, right? And so a lot of times, unfortunately, it's let's get through these and move forward. I'm a very big believer, and again, this is just me. Everybody's so different, but I'm a big believer in researching, what's working for other people. I'm a very big believer in having friends in the same industry who might work for different brokerages, which I do. Where you can just have a really transparent conversation about what's working for you, and let's learn from one another for the betterment of our clients. I also believe very, very much in learning from a mentor. I think, I had a mentor when I first started in this business, and she was wonderful, and she still is, but she's just moved, on upward up the chain here at now Gallagher. But I feel that having a mentor who can really hold your hand and walk you through, hey, these are the meetings that our organization is putting on that you really need to attend. I will tell you, my first 2.5 years, every single webinar that was offered by at that time Assured Partners, whether it be a carrier or an internal one, I attended. I attended every single one of them. I mean, what else did I have to do? I didn't have a huge book of business, right? So I think that's very important. I don't think that enough newer brokers take advantage of that type of education, because that's real life. That's like what's actually happening within your organization. It also teaches you carriers that are, more aligned in maybe your area, because every area of the United States is so different. And to be clear, I work all over. Gallagher's is worldwide. I do have multinational clients, so I have to learn that information as well. And so I think as much as you can get your hands on, and as much as you can participate in the internal trainings that you have, and then really align yourself with a mentor and go to networking functions within your industry, within the broker world. Go to carrier meetings that they constantly are having, like road shows and whatnot. I think starting out, that was probably the best thing I did, was align myself with a mentor and attend all of those meetings and just soak in as much as I possibly could. And I continue to do that today. It looks different, but I continue to do it. I have not stopped learning.
I love that. You'd be maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but I think a lot of people would be surprised with the people that are succeeding quickly in this industry or moving past that kind of divide, right? You have a lot of people that start in this industry and a lot of people that fall off in this industry, and then there's a pretty big divide to the people that succeed very wildly in this industry. And the people that I see moving through that divide the fastest, I've interviewed a lot of them now, and there's a common thread of mentorship, and finding the right mentor and learning from that person, whether that's an official mentorship or, hey, you know what you're doing. Can I ask you a few questions? Can you point me in the right direction of what to learn? Where should I learn more about this? And just asking the questions, and like an unofficial mentorship. They're curious, they're a sponge, they're finding people that are succeeding in the way they want to succeed, and they're finding the way to do it. So I love that that was kind of your path as well.
Well, and I'll expand on that because as you mentioned, we were just acquired by Gallagher, and so now we have a whole Gallagher team. We have Gallagher, resources which have been phenomenal. The team's been phenomenal. So me, 7 years in, I that's exactly what I've done. I've aligned myself with somebody from Gallagher that knows what he's doing and knows where to find the information that I'm going to need in order to be successful. Just soaking everything that I possibly can up because if not, it's like the blind leading the blind, and I want to make sure that I understand when we say, "Oh, we're so lucky," we've combined and we're stronger together, assured partners, Gallagher. What does that really mean if you don't explore what that actually means and be able to put the pedal to the metal for, no better saying for your clients like, hey, guess what? This is what we have. We were asked in the very beginning of our acquisition from some of our existing clients, hey, what does this mean? And I was honest, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I know that there's going to be stuff coming, but it's like drinking from a fire hose right now. As opportunities come up that I think are really great fit for you, I will let you know. And that's exactly what I've done. And they've been so thankful. But again, if I had not aligned myself with a mentor in an office, outside of our assured partners office here, that really knows the Gallagher way, then I would just be I'd have the Gallagher name, but I'd still just be assured partners. So it's really important. And the other thing too, actually, that I haven't touched on that so the typical broker, even salesperson, but broker specifically, um, everybody gets into this business because they have high hopes of making a lot of money, and there is a lot of money to be made, but you have to love what you do. And if you don't love what you do, that comes through because at the end of the day, you're serving clients, you're helping them come up with better solutions. And insurance is the top line item on their P&L, right? And so we have to be very strategic and consultative in nature to make sure that we're helping them as much as we possibly can from a business owner standpoint all the way down. And so that's the hope when you get into this business. But the reality is it's really hard. And if it wasn't hard, everybody would be doing it. But what sets people aside that are in my opinion that are successful in this business is not just the mentorship piece, but also it's grit, but it's also sticking to a schedule. You have to be very strict with yourself because even though I'm a W-2 employee, I like my days go the way I want my days to go. I could sleep in until 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't. I get up at 4:47. That's the time my alarm is set. And, I could work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't. I work into the evenings oftentimes. And I have what in the very beginning, the typical turnaround time for a new person in the insurance industry is about 18 months. 18 months after you get through that, then you're usually pretty good to go. I had a cadence that I followed like nobody's business. And when I first got into the broker world, it was almost a year to the day of me starting at Assured Partners that we were sent home for COVID. And I was not having a good year. It was all so new to me. It was really scary. And I was in my office at home every single day, oftentimes not even like getting up to eat lunch, all day, every day, attending every webinar I possibly could, following my cadence to a T. My calendar was blocked out specifically for prospecting, for client calls, for these learning calls. Do I call? Do I email today? Do I send a gift today? Like there's just so many different ways to get in front of a client that were really difficult, specifically during COVID. But if you stick to a cadence, at some point it's all going to pay off. And the problem that I have seen with, um, you know, people who have not necessarily succeeded in this industry is that they don't follow a rule. It's, I have a 2-hour break between my in-office meetings. I'm going to go to an extended lunch. or I'm going to go shopping or whatever the case may be. So, sorry to add that on, but I think that's very important for people who are new in the business to really understand. Like, you've got to be very, very, very scheduled and intentional with your calendar. And if you can do that and you can continue learning, the world is your oyster with regard to, succeeding in this business.
Yeah, I think we have a tendency as humans to underestimate the work that others put in to get where they are and assume that we can get there faster than we probably can. So setting the right expectations and understanding the work that it's going to take to get to that point is really, really important. So I'm glad you did bring that up, because that's another thing that a lot of people have brought up is, you know, that when they were getting started, they saw the person that was in the role for 20 years and they were like, yes, that's where I'm going to be, not understanding that that might have taken them 17, 18 years to get to, and that 17, 18 years took a lot of hours. So that's that's a good point. And yeah, just don't underestimate the time required in both a daily function and, a monthly, yearly function to get to that success. That's why that divide is as big as it is between the
Hmm.
people that start and the people that have huge success in this industry.
Yeah.
Really great insight. Thanks for that, Allison.
Thanks.
So one last question that I love asking everyone, where things are changing in this industry. You've got Mark Cuban that seems to be very interested in this industry right now and changing the way that PBMs are working. You've got a lot of people's eyes on this industry right now because they all just got delivered pretty bad news. You've got a
Mhm.
lot of CEOs that want to kind of peel back all the layers and understand what's going on a little bit better and understand the costs driving it. So I think we're going to see a lot of change over the next 5 to 10 years. What has you most excited about being in this space over the next 5, 10 years?
That I'll retire before it all ends. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's so funny. We just had we have conversations about this all the time, but we just had a very in-depth conversation about it yesterday as a team. And again, it's preparing for what we all know is going to come when you're looking at trend, right? And you're seeing that the ceiling is just not anywhere in sight. And when even before you get to that ceiling, it's not sustainable. And so figuring out what we can do for our clients, to be more creative so that we're not part of that trend. And one of those things is taking, and I know this sounds so corny, but it's so true, like taking control of their health program instead of giving it to the carriers. And I don't mean to sound like carriers are horrible people. They're not. They're just it's a losing battle that is happening with our system in the United States. And I don't think the answer is going to like a socialized medicine, model, which we're hearing also. Anyone who's ever lived through it or come from it can attest to the fact that it is not great. It's very difficult to get care, and you're paying lots of money for a concierge type of doctor, and even then, you might not get the care because doctors leave because they're not getting paid enough. So it's just a self perpetuating cycle. So I don't think that's the answer, but there are some solutions that we're working on as an organization to bring to our clients that will help them take more control of their healthcare. And that excites me. It excites me to be able to give them a solution or solutions that will really help to differentiate their plan from where everyone else's plan is going. And hopefully we can, do that for not just all of our clients, but other clients as well. Um, so that has me really excited. I'm really excited to work for an organization that takes this trend into consideration and is working toward figuring out a solution rather than just saying, oh, well, I mean, it is what it is. I guess this is just what we're going to have to do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we're
Yeah,
working on some things internally to be different.
that's awesome. And I think that's going to be what's required of the people that win through this is, I think on the other side of this, things are going to look wildly different than they do right now. but the consultants and the agencies that are committed to being on the forefront of that will help drive that rather than fall behind and wish that they had. So I love that that's the way that you're thinking about it, that you're taking all of those trends into account. Um, it's clear why your clients love working with you, why you've done so well in the business and you're succeeding the way that you are. And Allison, I appreciate you taking the time with me today. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me, Adam. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
This has been another episode of Benefits Broker Boost. Remember, be better tomorrow than you were today. Have a good one.